We spend a huge amount of time, don't we, obsessing over like external obstacles. The competition, the market, maybe that one impossible boss. But what if the biggest, most persistent obstacle, the one standing between you and, the best version of yourself? What if it isn't external at all?
What if it lives inside your own head? Rent-free, as they say.
Exactly.
That's really the powerful idea at the heart of Ryan Holiday's work in Ego is the enemy. And it's super important we clarify what we mean by ego here.
Right. It's not the textbook Freud stuff.
No, not the id and the superego. This is ego in the common sense, that self-destructive thing, that unhealthy belief in your own importance.
Arrogance, maybe? Self-centered ambition?
Yeah, all of that. The stuff that causes people to just completely derail.
Right. That dangerous inner voice whispering, oh, you're too good for this task. Or maybe you already know everything you need to know. So our mission today, kind of pulling from these different analyses of Holiday's philosophy, is to track this inner enemy across the three big phases of life.
The unavoidable ones.
Yeah. How the ego stops you from building things, how it undermines you when you actually succeed, and how it can, destroy you when you fail.
And it's a continuous loop, really. Aspiration, then success, then adversity or failure, and back again. It keeps going. And the goal is pretty clear, isn't it? It's to help you be humble in your aspirations, gracious in your success, and resilient in your failures.
Manage the ego at each stage. Stay on the path.
That's the idea. If you can do that, you can keep moving forward.
Okay, so let's jump right into that first phase then. The aspirant. You're starting out, you've got talent, you've got drive, but this is exactly where the ego sets, like, the first really critical traps. Why is talent just not enough on its own?
Well, because the ego tells you your talent is like a finished product. It convinces you you're already smart enough, you know enough.
So it blocks improvement.
Totally. It blocks the curiosity, the humility you need for genuine growth. Talent's just, it's raw material, right? The ego is the worst enemy to actually shaping that material into something, useful. If you let that ego run the show, you'll feel like you're doing a lot.
But you're actually stuck.
Exactly. Spinning your wheels.
That brings us to something I found really interesting, this idea of the passion paradox. You can be super busy, excited, totally passionate, but then look up after a year and realize you haven't actually accomplished anything tangible. How does passion do that? Lead us astray?
Well, passion in its raw form, it's often pretty self-centered, isn't it? It's about how you feel right now.
The excitement, the gratification?
Right. Chasing that short-term buzz. Holiday argues what we really need is purpose.
Okay, purpose. How's that different?
Purpose is, he calls it passion with boundaries. It's about focusing on something outside yourself.
Like a goal, a mission?
A contribution, maybe a service. Something bigger than just feeding your own need for pleasure or, like, validation. It shifts the whole energy from me, to the mission.
Okay, that makes sense. And purpose requires real effort, which means checking that desire to be seen as important.
Definitely.
The sources say this aspirational phase demands you act small and live small, focus on the unglamorous stuff, the grunt work. But, in a culture that rewards self-promotion so much, isn't it incredibly hard to willingly step back and just be lesser?
It feels counterintuitive, yeah. But it's necessary. Real greatness often comes from those humble, quiet beginnings. You shouldn't waste energy trying to prove how smart or talented you are.
So what's the actionable thing?
The approach is to sort of subsume your identity into something bigger. Successful organization, a team, a mentor.
Be okay with being the least important person in the room for a while.
Exactly. And use results, actual work done, to change your standing. Not talk.
Let the work speak.
Let the work speak.
The sources really hammer home this distinction between focusing on the destination versus the journey. We see this with Coach Bill Walsh, right? The legendary football coach.
Oh, yeah, great example.
He didn't obsess over the big, vague goal of winning Super Bowls. He created something else, a standard of performance.
That's it. He made the process the goal.
Yeah.
His focus was on hyper-detailed execution.
Right.
Like exactly how the quarterback set his feet, precisely how the receiver ran a certain route. Tiny details.
So he focused on the effort, the parts he could actually control.
Right. Perfecting the basics, the execution, not the final score, which has variables you can't control. The idea is the outcome takes care of itself if the execution is consistently excellent.
It reminds me of that Henry Ford quote. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do.
Exactly. You build it on what you've done. Consistent, excellent work.
That's a really powerful standard for anyone starting out. But what happens when that effort pays off? When you actually hit the goal? The book says you enter the danger zone.
Disaster zone.
Does success really weaken the person who achieved it? Is that true?
It absolutely can, yeah. Success often removes the very things that got you there. The accountability, maybe the external pressure that forced discipline. And it generates new, dangerous delusions. Entitlement, definitely. A false sense of total control. And sometimes paranoia, thinking everyone else is jealous or out to get you.
Wow. So if success isn't guarded by strong values, it can be pretty short-lived.
Almost always brief, yeah. Without that foundation.
Okay, so if the will and discipline start to weaken, how do we actively, defend against that ego inflation? What's the strategy?
The core defense is you have to maintain the identity of a student. Always.
Always be learning.
Always be learning. You have to be continually seeking improvement. Like the sources say, if you're not still learning, you're already dying.
And success makes people defensive, right? The ego hates criticism because it thinks it's already arrived.
Exactly. It thinks it has nothing left to learn, which is absurd.
There's that great contrast between the amateur and the professional here. The amateur hears criticism and feels threatened.
Yeah, like it's a personal attack.
But the professional finds learning enjoyable. They actually like being humbled sometimes.
Yes. They seek it out. Think about Kirk Hammett from Metallica.
Oh, okay. The guitarist.
Right. He achieves massive success, joins one of the biggest bands on the planet, and was one of the first things he does.
Right.
He seeks out a guitar teacher after joining Metallica because he knew he still had gaps. He wanted to get better.
Wow. That's real humility.
That's the mentality of a lifelong student. Success isn't the end point. It's just a platform for deeper learning.
Okay. So once success hits, the ego also tempts us to start rewriting history a bit, crafting these self-serving stories about how we got there.
Oh, absolutely. We start thinking the world revolves around us and our amazing accomplishments. It's a huge gravitational pull, that self-absorption.
So how do we fight that? How do we stay grounded?
You fight it with sobriety and perspective.
Yeah.
And this is where Stoicism offers a really practical tool. Holiday talks about sympathia.
Sympathia, like sympathy.
Sort of, but broader. It's this idea of universal connectedness. Everything is linked. And it's not just some abstract philosophy, it's a practice.
A practice of realizing how small you actually are in the grand scheme of things.
Precisely. Meditating on the vastness of the universe. Thinking about the billions who came before you, the billions who will come after. Contemplating deep time, deep history. It actively counteracts the ego's urge to think your moment, your success, is the center of everything. You realize you're just one small, connected part of this immense whole.
Widening the lens forces humility.
It really does. Makes the ego's demands seem kind of ridiculous against that cosmic backdrop.
That perspective is crucial then, and it must be just as essential for the third phase, the failed resilience and recovery. What happens when that success inevitably slips? Or just when random adversity hits you out of the blue?
Well, failure is a certainty, right? But the key thing the book emphasizes is that failure is usually temporary, unless you make that not so.
Meaning, unless your reaction makes it permanent?
Exactly. The ego's default is, like, self-pity, blaming everyone else, which gets you nowhere. The goal in recovery is to avoid getting sucked into that pity party. Instead, hold on to your purpose. Remember why you started. Practice patience. Maintain poise. Go back to those first principles you learned as an aspirant.
We have immense control over one thing during failure. Our response.
The only thing, really.
And the sources really push this idea of turning dead time into alive time. Can you unpack that a bit? That feels like a game changer.
It really is. Dead time is. Well, it's time spent passively. You're just waiting.
Waiting for things outside you to change.
Yeah. Waiting for the layoff to end, waiting for the injury to heal, waiting for someone else to give you another shot. You're just stuck.
Okay, and a lifetime.
A lifetime is time you actively use for learning, for preparation, for self-improvement, no matter how bad your current circumstances are. You choose to make the time productive.
You see this in those really extreme examples, don't you? Like Malcolm X in prison.
Reading constantly, educating himself, turning confinement into a university.
Or Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp.
Refining his psychological theories, finding meaning and purpose even in the absolute worst conditions. Their bodies were trapped, but their minds were fiercely alive and working.
They didn't let the adversity define the entirety of their time. They chose how to use that moment.
That choice of response. That's everything. And speaking of powerful responses, we have to talk about Jackie Robinson.
Breaking the color barrier in baseball, his response to the open racism must have been one of the hardest tests of self-control imaginable.
Unbelievably difficult. Think about it. The ego screams for immediate payback, right? It demands you fight back when you're wronged, insulted, attacked.
Of course.
But Robinson understood his mission was bigger than his personal feelings, bigger than his ego's need for retaliation.
His restraint wasn't weakness.
No, it was incredible strength, driven by a higher purpose, integrating the game. If he had lost his cool, reacted with ego, lashed out, he would have given ammunition to the racists and undermined the entire cause.
So his success then wasn't measured by external stuff like approval or even just winning games initially. It was something internal.
Precisely. When success fades or external validation disappears, the only real metric left is meeting your own high standards.
That's the ultimate measure.
That's what you measure yourself against, your potential, the absolute best you're capable of. You basically have to work yourself back to that aspirational mindset and start the loop again. Focus relentlessly on that internal scorecard.
Okay, that brings us towards wrapping up. For the listener who's thinking, all right, I get it, ego's a problem, what are the most immediate practical ways to apply these ideas, to, mortify the ego, as the book puts it?
Yeah, we can definitely pull together a kind of mental checklist. First, let purpose drive you, not just passion. Really know your core values, what's actually important to you.
Be effort-focused, not outcome-oriented.
Yes, relentlessly. Maintain character over charisma. Character is who you are when no one's looking. Right.
Right.
And maybe the biggest one, fight the disease of me.
Ugh, the disease of me. That constant, exhausting inner voice just talking about what I want, what I deserve, what I should have.
It's draining.
That seems directly linked to the idea that we need to do more and talk less.
Absolutely. Talking too much, thinking too much about what you plan to do. Often that's just the ego looking for validation before you've even done the work.
And it drains energy needed for actually doing it.
Exactly. Quiet confidence shows up in results.
Yeah.
The ancient Stoics had a word for this state. This tranquility you get from staying on your own path, not getting distracted by comparison or needing praise. They called it euthymia.
Euthymia, tranquility, getting off that treadmill of comparing and needing approval.
Yeah. And a huge obstacle to euthymia, the final ego trap we should mention, is the imaginary audience.
Right. That psychological thing, you often hear about it with teenagers, where we mistakenly think everyone is watching us, judging our every move.
But it absolutely persists in adults. It fuels the ego. You make one small mistake in a meeting, and you're convinced for days that everyone in the company is talking about it.
When really?
They're not. They're completely wrapped up in their own internal dramas, their own mistakes, their own imaginary audiences. They barely notice.
Realizing that people don't think about you nearly as much as your ego tells you they do, that should be a huge relief, actually.
It's incredibly freeing. It releases you from needing that external approval and lets you just get back to the quiet, real work. Focus on your euthymia, not your reputation.
This has been a really powerful deep dive into, well, internal management. The ego truly is the enemy of building, maintaining, and recovering.
But it can be managed. It can be directed. Through humility, through discipline, through purpose.
It's an endless loop of self-improvement, isn't it?
It really is. That journey, aspiration to success, to adversity, and right back to aspiration, it's constant. If your goal is to keep becoming the best version of yourself, that struggle against the ego never really stops. It's perpetual.
So we'll leave you with this final, maybe provocative thought to chew on today, one that takes us right back to the absolute humility needed in that aspirational phase. What specific humble task am I avoiding today because my ego believes I am already too important to do the grunt work?
Good question.
Find that task, execute it with excellence, and start taming your inner enemy.